What a week it was in the NBL sphere. We had big wins, we had surprise results, and, of course, we had one of the best performances we have ever seen. And say one off, because the man who had the best, which we will touch on later, joins us today. Derek Rucker, welcome in. Your first time on the Overtime panel.
It is. Thanks for having me, guys. And kind of ironic that I get asked to appear this week.
Yeah, there might be good reason for that. We will delve into later. Petey, a great week of basketball as usual.
Yeah, it was. And again, some fantastic. We'll have to break it down because it's one of the best performances, as you said. But there's plenty going on. The Jack Jumpers bounce back. The Phoenix continue to roll. And again, everything that's taking place so far, it's only been 9 rounds. And we're probably none the wiser to figure out who a championship series is going to be between.
The fact that Tasmania beat New Zealand, I have given up I don't even know why we do a show. Why do we even try to predict this stuff? It's just going to throw it all up in the air. But let's focus in right now on one of the best performances we've ever seen. Chris Goulding absolutely lit it up against the Wildcats. United were dead and buried. So dead and buried, Pete, that I left this game at halftime. And then he went on and did this.
You did. You were in the group chat just being like, what's happened? I've already left. As soon as you finish work, you punch out, which is about sounds right. But this was incredible. And again, the 46 in the win. We break down the actual numbers of it, but that 3-minute and 20-second stretch in the third quarter where he hit 6 threes, had 22 points. I tweeted about it. Everyone's going to continue to talk about it. I've seen a lot of things over my time in basketball, whether that's internationally, all of that, and have a look at all the records that were broken by Chris Goulding in this. The 46 points as a whole, it's incredible. But again, that 3-minute stretch in particular is what I'm trying to talk about. I've never seen a 3-minute stretch like that. When you hit that many threes, when you go from your team being in that much of a hole to in the driver's seat to win, I've just never seen anything like it.
Oh, well, I've never seen anything like it, but I've seen something better. You look at the top of that list, Derek Rucker, you were saying off air, why is this guy getting all the credit? Look what he's sandwiched between. That's real greatness.
Wow, guys, I don't know what to say. I mean, when this was brought to my attention, I got kind of emotional about it. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's such a rare space to be in. And I was at that game the other night, and I'm not sure if I breached any protocols, but I actually got up, Pete, in that third quarter and gave him a standing ovation because it is rare that you see a performance like that. I've seen so many great ones. I played with Leroy Loggins. I watched Andrew Gaze do tremendous things. I watched Shane Hill, Leonard Copeland, all these guys pull off these amazing feats. But to be in the house for that one the other night, it just rang a little bit more special.
Well, you played 45 minutes this. You used to play in the 48-minute era. Why were you on the bench for 2.5 is my biggest question. What's going on there?
I have no idea, but people are going to be like, oh, Derek, it doesn't matter as much because you played in the 48-minute era. What Chris did was outstanding.
In everyone's defense, that was just me saying that.
Yeah.
But hey, let me tell you something else, though. I could have squeezed more in. If I know I only got 40 minutes to go, I will squeeze it all in.
I just love as well. It was brought to my attention. You knew full well that he was coming for your record. The only reason you were standing up was you were about to run out there and block one of the shots if he was going to break that record.
But it was great to see someone get that many shots off. It's so rare. In the era of equal opportunity and everybody feeling like they have a license to shoot the basketball, it was good to see Chris get 32 shots up. And 21 of them threes.
And it's also the way this permeates the mainstream when something like this happened. I walked into the gym on Sunday and people are saying, oh, do you see Chris Goulding's game, blah, blah, blah. Even people that would never talk about basketball, would never talk about it, they're going on about it. So stuff like this permeates, and that is why we need to bring the game back to 48 minutes. And I'm strong on that point because these things will happen more often. You know what the average basketball fan wants? They don't want to see someone win the league MVP averaging 19 points, 21 points. They want to see someone averaging 30, averaging 26. To get those numbers back, more triple doubles, we need the 48-minute era.
And Pete, it would align us more, and even though the numbers won't be totally apples and apples, if we're in line with the 48 minutes of the NBA, it does provide some arguments and some discussions about how our numbers potentially translate to NBA numbers when guys are trying to make that move.
For sure. And again, I looked at Chris Goulding. So the 46 points on the weekend. He's had the 50-point game in the 40-minute era. But the one that stands out for me in the 40-minute era, Kirk Penny, when we first went to the 40-minute era, he had 49 in 34 minutes. He took 23 shots.
Wow.
And Kirk Penny's one of my favourite NBL players of all time. But that was a full game performance that I can really recall. But again, that 3.5-minute stretch was outstanding.
Also a shout out to Shane Healy, went 12 for 17 from the three-point line one game. It's fun to go back in the archives and see some of these amazing performances. But while the Chris Goulding stuff was amazing, at times there it did feel like a masterclass in how not to defend the hot hand.
Well, I broke down some clips here. So let's have a look. Chris Goulding, we know he's a flamethrower. It doesn't matter how well he's playing. He's going to get hot at some point. So this is Dylan Windler guarding him in the corner. He's already hit a couple at this point. You need to top block that. He cannot get any space coming off screens. If you're a little late, he's gone. If he's already starting to feel good, we've seen him start to put the ball on the floor a little bit more this season, so he understands what's going on. Here's just a little bit of a miscommunication, right? We're going to switch Almanza onto Delhi, but then Elijah Pepper, you've got to be rotating. You've got to be ready to rotate here. Almanza does a really good job to arrive on the catch with his length, but your hands are down by your knees.
He's just a kid.
Your hands are down. But he's already hit a couple. He's already hit a couple rucks. So here's Dylan Windler. You know Chris Goulding. They're looking for him. He's already hit a couple. You just have to sit in his pocket. Hold his pocket wherever he goes. Do not let him get any space. Have a look at this one. This ends in a miss. He's already hit 4. He's already hit 5. I think this is after he's hit 8. Why are hands down? Why are you going underneath screens? They missed that one. He probably should have had 60 in the end. He probably should have.
There was another, the one in transition that was wide open. It was too open.
In the end, but again, he's playing with the way the defense is dealt. I thought there could have been maybe a timeout at some point in that. You could have top blocked, you could have boxed and won. All of this in the moment. But what I love the most about John Rillie in the press conference, because everyone talks about Ben Henshaw, Elijah Pepper being the next big Aussie stars, these kids coming through, and we've seen the glimpses of what they can be. And he said, look, I can show them all the film of Chris Goulding if that's the greatness they aspire to. I can show them that film. But until they're baptised by the fire like that, they'll never really understand it. So I really, really thought that was a great quote.
But it's interesting, when you put defensive players in situations where they have to make decisions, the more decisions you can force them to make, the more likely you're going to get an error. And ironically, we saw Melbourne United be victimized by PJC in a similar situation earlier in the week, where they just got pick and roll, and they forced even a great defensive team like Melbourne United to make multiple decisions in a possession, and then ultimately it led to breakdowns. So it was kind of ironic that they flipped the script, and now they became the aggressor.
So just to round that out, you're saying that it wasn't actually special by Chris, it was just very, very poor defending.
Oh, no.
Have I misread it?
Yeah, you have. And once again, you have failed to listen to a panel member.
So there's a bee flying around the room that I was watching right there. But it wasn't all good news for Melbourne United, because Jack White, arguably their most important player right now, was injured in the game.
Yeah, it's not good. Again, we know his history with injuries, and that was an Achilles, but the calf injury for Jack White now, and he's not going to play this weekend. He's going to sit out the FIBA window. I think you're just going to be a little more cautious because of the Achilles history, but he's in a little bit of discomfort. He has been enormous this year. The game up against Brisbane, when he's putting up 15-plus rebounds in a game, and this is why we talk about MVP discussions, but he's been unbelievable. He's been their best, most consistent player this year. But averaging 13.5 points a game is not going to get you winning an MVP. It'll probably get you in a discussion, which I think he is in the discussion of. But he's got to be able to be more assertive and aggressive on the offensive end. We've seen that he's also capable of that too. I'd just like him to hone in on that.
Well, it's apparent that he's come back even a better athlete despite the Achilles problem that he had a couple of seasons ago. And sometimes that happens when you go play in more athletic competitions. There can be a transfer in your athleticism to a higher level. I never would have imagined that he would be rebounding the basketball the way he is. He has a hunger. He's got the physical attributes to go up and get balls. And right now, you probably say he's the best rebounder in the competition. If you had to have one guy go get a board, Jack White's the guy.
Talk about the athleticism. Looking at some stats today, which Melbourne United lead the league in alley-oops made so far this season. But if you had to guess, who's leading the league in dunks made this year? If you had to have a guess.
Jordan Crawford.
Yeah, that's a... He's close. Close in ball taps.
Right.
If you had to have any guess.
Apologies, Jordan.
Doesn't need that drive-by. Marcus Lee. Marcus Lee's the one who leads the dunks in this so far this season. Montrez is second and Jack White is third. So they are getting oops, they're getting drop-off passes with the athleticism, and it's paying dividends.
One of the benefits, though, of having Delhi and Shaylee out there, these guys in that game when Chris had 46, they had 19 dimes between the two of them. And for years, I've been talking about Chris needs to get more pin downs. There needs to be more purpose in the offense to ensure that he gets touches. Well, maybe part of the problem, in hindsight, was that They didn't have those pure distributors to get him the ball. Now they have those. You see more focus going Chris's way.
Well, Melbourne United, they bounced back, 2 wins over the weekend, looking good. The Illawarra Hawks, we were there over the weekend. It was not pretty. It hasn't been pretty for them. They've now lost 3 of their last 4. At what point have they gone from hero to zero when we start ringing that panic bell?
Well, I'm not ready to panic yet. I think every team has peaks and troughs right throughout the season. You kind of understand that you're never going to be the best team in the competition all season long. Most teams in recent history are going to have multiple times where they go through these little slumps. It's more, how do they get out of it, which I'm starting to figure out is what is the fix here? I'm watching them play. We called that game in Adelaide, and there's just a bit of a disconnect on the defensive end. Offensively, they're not there. And I've praised their equal opportunity offense all season long. They're probably the one team that doesn't have an offensive hierarchy. It's easy in times past, it's Tyler Harvey, because it's anybody on any given night. Is that sustainable going forward? The more I look at it, the more I'm like, I think they need to figure out who's their go-to guy. Who is it? What happened to Darius Days from the first couple of rounds? He's been really quiet since. Sam Froling got great touches, scored, they didn't go back to him. Should they have a hierarchy, or can they figure it out as an equal opportunity offense?
Well, right now we'll have a look at their defensive end, because that has been very, very poor with the points conceded over the last 4 games. You look at that, issues on the offensive end, but United, 92, 82, 113 to a Bryce Cotton-less Wildcats. That is, BA should be investigating that. Basketball Australia's been investigating everything in this league. Investigate how you give up 113 to a team without Bryce Cotton, Derek.
Well, you look at that United game where they lost, and that is the game where Trey Kell went down, and obviously he was playing at such a high level. I think there was a tough time trying to figure out how to play without him, particularly on the offensive end where he was driving so much of their success. When your offense goes bad, we know it's a two-way street. Consequently, your defense suffers, and I think that's where they are. Now, there's going to be a time lag. Just because Trey Kell comes back doesn't mean everything falls back into place. Everyone has to get used to playing with him again, and he's such a quality player. He's got to come through this weekend against the Sydney Kings. They need to win a big game, particularly with it being in Wollongong.
We'll talk about that because that is a massive game before the FIBA break. But defensively, you said there's been a bit slowed, some disconnect. Have a look at some clips from this game in Adelaide. So you talk about a disconnect. Dave O'Hickey, you want him guarding Kendrick Davis. Todd Blanchfield, I love you, Toddy. You're not as quick as you used to be. There's no screen there. Wow. There's no need to switch. Kendrick Davis just goes straight past him. So there's no communication on that. You're switching for the sake of it. Wani Swaka-Bullock, he's been one of the best defenders this year. Stops the ball at the three-point line down the other end. You've got to stop that way as soon as it gets inbounded. You've got to start to turn players. Where is this what we saw at the start of the season? They continue to go here. You talk about guys, where's everybody in position? 4 guys watching the ball. You know where this is going. Well, this is going straight up to Montrezl Harrell. Montrezl Harrell had a big dunk, a big play, but everybody's just kind of caught ball watching. And this one here, it happened twice. Felix, we were there. Trey Kell, caught ball watching. That is under control. Wani Swaka-Bullock has that under control. You can't be caught ball watching. There's just a bit of a disconnect on the defensive end.
Well, Wani has been an outstanding defender for the better part of the year, but over the past 3, you've seen his individual defensive rating drop almost 10 points. He is now below league average, and he needs to pick that up because I think he has to be their primary point of attack defender.
Let's have a look at who the Hawks have actually beaten, because, I'm not going to go out and say we've been sold a dud, but they haven't exactly taken on the top of the table and had too much success. Now, the Hawks last year, they were the fairy tale story. They were the great narrative. This year, we started off saying the same thing, but when we dig into the info right now, it does not look as pretty on paper.
Pete, you know what can be tricky? Is because they were getting big wins early. And sometimes the margin of victory...
And we want them to win. We want them to do well. Correct. The psyche is there.
Correct. But the margin of victory can sometimes mislead you about how good a team is. Sometimes teams get behind and they just start playing and go for it. They don't worry about the margin of victory or the margin of defeat. And Illawarra had some big-time wins early, but then they've struggled over the past 3 to 4 rounds, and maybe we gave them a little bit too much credit too early.
Well, I've still got them in the top tier. I think they're going to be around the mark as a championship contender, but that graphic was fascinating. I should probably read the pre-graphics right now because I didn't realise how concerning it was. That was unbelievable. Yeah. But you mentioned it as well, Rucker, talking about the top teams that they've struggled to beat. You need to be able to set the tone and put thoughts into the minds of these Melbournes, these Perths, these Adelaide teams who we expect to be a business end. Because if you get swept in a season or other teams come in and get it done, that does hold weight come finals.
And Pete, for our own sake as a team, You know, we've been there in those locker rooms in big games. And you know what it's you know what
Hey, we can have this chat. Just keep looking at me, right?
I'll step out for a moment. You guys have this chat.
We know what it feels like when you've got to go into Sydney and win a playoff game. You've got to go out to Perth and win a playoff game. You need all your confidence. You need all your prowess as a unit. Sorry, Felix, that was
Have you ever tried to get 10 dudes into a nightclub when you're out with the boys post-game? That's pressure. That's real pressure. And who always comes through?
Yeah, you would. You would. You would.
Fair.
No, it is. This game this weekend, though, the Freeway Series, the rivalry before the FIBA break, it's way more important, I think, for the Hawks than Sydney. And Sydney have some things they want to sort out, I think, over the FIBA break, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But for the Illawarra Hawks, you talk about beating big teams. They've already done it once. I think this game is huge for them, and especially their morale mentally with how they started before the FIBA break.
How worried are we that this 3 out of 4 losses has come right after Justin Tatum went at the officials, started showing these outbursts of emotion that we didn't see from him last year, we didn't see from him early this year? If I'm an Illawarra Hawks fan, there's a clear reason why this is happening.
Did it mess his mojo up?
I think it's messed the mojo up.
Yeah.
I think it's ruined it.
I think he was, at the time, he's the best coach in the league, right? And we know he can be the best coach in the league, but when you're caught up on other things, and again, we've highlighted this, we've all talked about it for the last couple of weeks, some of the things that he's been talking about, you can understand the frustration. You can understand exactly what he's saying. But the problem is now that the more you continue to do that, it doesn't matter how small it is, that seed is planted in every player's mind now. So every player hears that, and it's kind of like, well, it's distracting them from the process. And you'll say it isn't, and the players will say, no, we're not even worried about that. But the more it goes on, the more it'll slowly build. I want them to get back to the way they played at the start, where they're the best team in the competition. No one could stay near them. They just worried about putting the ball in the basket, getting stops on one end. But it's inevitable. The more that it goes on, I think the more that it's going to get in players' minds.
Well, he's got to be his authentic self as a coach. And remember, he's still relatively new to the whole head coaching experience, and particularly at the NBL level. So he's still trying to navigate, who am I? What's my coaching identity? I want to be fierce. I want to be passionate. And sometimes that may manifest in some extracurricular venom towards the referees. So he's got to find the right balance where he's not giving his team an out by going at the referees all the time, but yet he's maintaining his real, true passion.
I absolutely love Justin Tatum. He is my favourite coach in the league. I love what he does. I hope that they win the championship this year. But it just doesn't sit well with me because this team, last year, going into this year, they were giant killers. They were underdogs, backs against the wall stuff. The actions of Justin Tatum towards the officials does not represent that. And it feels like this team is losing its identity, and you're seeing it on the defensive end.
And again,
whenever you lose that underdog mentality, it doesn't show on the offensive end. It shows on the defensive end, and that's where they're struggling.
We've spoken about, we understand his frustration. Some of the key points that he has spoken about over the last couple of weeks, we completely agree. We can understand you talk about some people get away with different things. There's more verbal from one side. The coach is running up and down the sideline. I completely understand that. I'm with you. I don't want him to lose who he is as a coach and a person. If there's a place where he thinks he needs to have an outburst, he's got to do it. But then as soon as that's done, if it's a tee or whatever, that's gone, right? And that moment's gone. The more you harp on it in the game, the more, as you said, the players then start to hear it. That just inevitably trickles through. Its human nature. But if you're going to have an outburst, if you're unhappy with the call, whatever it is, you've got to do that. You have to be able to show your emotions. But after that, let's move on, let's get stops, and let's get back to being the best team in the league.
The hard part of this is, if they go 4 for 4 and he's yapping like that on the sideline, I'm saying, I love the energy from Justin Tatum. That's what we need on the sideline.
We've seen the two sides.
We've seen the two sides, but I do think there's a few things to fix there. But it's time to shift the mood a little bit. It's not a cupcake league. Let's jump into our favourite segment. The first time you join us, Derek Rucker. Now, of course, Leonard not here this week, but I used to come for him. I used to come for him hard, and I've had to find a new target.
Oh, you're not coming to Ruck. You're not coming to Ruck.
I would never do that. I would never do that. I'm coming at someone else because, doink, this was pre-game. Over there in Adelaide, doink, you said I went 0 for 6. Look at you pre-game breaking the rim. They had to use that for the game, and they had to have it readjusted. Look at that. Look at those cakes.
Yeah. Firstly,
and then look at this. Yeah. Kelsey at one point got so sick of you doing this pre-game, 0 for 7. Look at that. Donk, 0 for 8. And we're not adjusting this camera as well. That's moving. Kelsey has one shot. Bang. Ooh. Gets the job done, Pete. So you're coming at me for going 0 for 6 in 3 minutes, I believe, in that venue. And then you're going to come and dish that up pre-game?
So I hit 7 straight in that, and I'm going to have a word with the producer who wants me to get on to the next one. That 3 of those clips were the exact same there, so I don't know where you've found that. That is appalling. I wondered why when I get a text saying, should we show your makes, and it wasn't shown, why they wasn't going to be shown.
I'm a master of the bad edit now.
My
I know how it's done. I know how it's done.
No one has been... Oh, well, again, yeah. Okay, we'll talk about...
It was a good edit.
Okay, so I definitely hit 7 straight. I'll find that clip for everybody. We talk about some great moments that we've got to be better from. CG, what an unbelievable performance. But Chris, you and Dino have a great relationship. Don't leave one of the greatest coaches in the league hanging like this. CG, 9 threes. Let's get him out of the game. No. Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Is Dino trying to play that off? He's trying to play that off as a play call.
Oh, no.
I think he was trying to go for a play call after that. And I was watching that and I'm just like, you know what? If anyone raises their hand or anybody puts their hand, I don't care what it is, but this reminded me, always look after people. You could just be commentating, you know what, I'm trying to point, say, oh, how you going, mate? Bloody how you going, mate? That's what that reminded me of. I was like, yeah, no worries. So you just always look after your fellow colleagues. Come back for you. I got one more before we get to Ruck.
You're running out of breath, man.
Well, I'm sure I'm not escaping this.
No, you are. You are escaping this because the cameras are always rolling, Ruck, and you know that.
I know that.
But our fearless leader sometimes forgets that. Have a look at these poor women who have glanced.
Why is she looking at my phone?
They've seen what's on his phone and they are horrified. Oh my, you can't. He's really looking that up. It's 4 p.m. on a Sunday and he hears it and be like,
whoops.
oh my goodness. He goes quickly, let me get rid of my cookies and history real quick.
Unfortunate.
Wow.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah. What time does the show air?
Yeah, it's
I'm not
too
too
early.
What we're doing. No, but that was one of your best cupcake segments, man.
I'm not.
You know exactly
what's coming here. Come on, Ruck.
Derek, what do you got for us?
Well, Felix, while we're on top of you, let's
Jesus.
let's look at how you shoot the basketball.
Yes.
Now we've grown accustomed to your wonderful display as a rookie.
Thank you.
But how did you go down in Adelaide? How did you fare shooting the basketball, Mr.
Plenty of footage
Hofe?
of me in Adelaide, unfortunately. What's going on here?
Hopley's not shy, cranking up shots. That's another 3 from the field. He tried like again. That's not a foul.
And also, just a cinematic touch, putting the John Casey over that, whoever's in charge.
That nearly hit me in
The
the head.
air ball from 16 feet is
That
not a
nearly
good
hit-
look. The shirt looked fantastic, though. You look good.
Thank you.
Oh, no, you're not Ruck.
Welcome to Overtime. We're heading to a break. Plenty more of that coming up.
And he'll throw it up. It's showtime at the Adelaide Entertainment Centre. Isaac Humphries gets it on the roll and goes upstairs.
This is going up.
Kendrick Davis in transition, cash it. And the Adelaide 36ers have got a stranglehold on this game. DJ with a nice little dip off.
Win, lose or draw, the Adelaide 36ers are the most entertaining team in the competition right now, as evident by having 2 out of the top 3 top scorers in the league. They're doing it all over the place. We absolutely love them for it. But the Adelaide Entertainment Centre, they are now 10-0. Going into last year, it has become a fortress. Peter Hooley, and one of the main reasons why is DJ seems to light it up every time they go there.
It's a really, really fun place to go. Called 2 games down there so far this year. But you're talking about DJ Vasiljevic, he had 23 points, 4 made threes. Look at the bottom. Vasiljevic, Harold Davis combined for 64, 20 and 17. So they're 3 of their main 4. Isaac Humphries still coming back from injury. Terrell Martin still getting into game shape. You just look at what they can achieve, and they've got every single base covered, it seems. But DJ in particular, what I like so much about him, and he's currently 6th in scoring. He was sitting inside the top 5. They've got 3 of the top 6. And again,
remarkable.
to go back, I think it was 2021 where Vic Law and Bryce Cotton both averaged 20 points for the same team. That was from the Perth Wildcats when Vic Law joined Perth. But DJ in particular, what I love right now is that he's not forcing anything, right? He's picking his moments. Damian Martin said in the preseason roundtable, when we're talking about different teams, what he wants to see from DJ is, yes, he wants him to average close to 20 points a game, but he wants to see him get 15 of those in quick succession like Chris Goulding does. And we're starting to see DJ understand that moment where Kendrick is playing unbelievable. We'll talk about Montrez, Isaac Humphries. You might not get as many touches per quarter, but when it's your time to go and you've hit one, fill it up for a quick few minutes.
And he had a great scoring game the other day, but your point is that instead of scoring 28 points and 15 of them being fluff, score 17, 18, and they're all critical and hit them at the right time. So those back-to-back dagger threes, that's the type of game that I think will best suit DJ in a successful and winning 36ers team because they've got talent all over the floor. Kendrick Davis is going to have to sacrifice. We see him doing a pretty good job of that. He could probably go for 25, 26 on certain nights here, but he realizes he's got to dish the ball, he's got to distribute, and they've probably got, dare I say, that Montrez might be the best player in the competition. So I think the way Mike Wells is bringing them all together is really impressive because he had a short time frame to do it within. But they look solid, man. The big thing for me is, can they defend on the road?
They've got all the bases covered in terms of a championship contender. And you think about when you get to the business end of the season, you're going to play 7.5 guys, but they can match what any team throws at. They've got the 2 bigs to roll in. You can roll Jarrell Martin through there as well. So 3 bigs to figure out 2 positions for 40 minutes. You've got one of the best wing defenders in the league in Sunday Dech. If you need to play small, you can throw Lat Mayen in there at the 4. Jason Kidd as just a point guard who can really calm things down. They've got every single base covered. It's all about getting everybody right and understanding the rotations, but that's why they're so hard to beat at home, and that's why they're going to be a championship contender this year.
The turnaround from Kendrick Davis, who I still say is the most underrated player in the competition, arguably the most impactful player in the competition, the turnaround from his first couple of weeks to now has been remarkable.
And it comes down to composure. And you talk about he could score 28 each night. Going back to round 1, have a look at some clips I was looking at. He was trying to. That's one of the things he was trying to. This is back in Hoops Fest, right? So forcing a shot, okay, you get ball qual in the air, ball qual turns around. That's got to be a pass. That's been a pass now. Even this, 1-on-2, just trying to force things through. So this is back in round 1, still trying to understand the game, still trying to understand the moments. Look, you're just bowling over Kelly LePepe. To be honest, Kelly, we're surprised that Kendrick didn't fall the other way with Kelly's strength. But even this one, you got one of the best defenders in the league on you, and Xavier Cooks. That's a tough shot. So that was how he was playing in the first couple of games, and then it all changed.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of people have been asking me, Felix, you're a student of the game. What happened?
Who asked you that? Who?
The cameraman did. Thank you. I'll get back to you on that one. What turned it around for Kendrick Davis? And I think we know what it was. Let's go back to it. Olgun Uluc came out and said he's revised that tweet. His original tweet was hurtful and offensive to Kendrick Davis. He's revised it before. And Kendrick Davis clapped back and said, go make sure we visit this tweet in a few months, directly quoting it.
As in, we're going to check out how I play over the next couple of months, and then we'll talk again. And if we're talking now, he is one of the top 3 or 4 point guards in the competition.
Top 3 or 4?
There's some good point guards in here. I'm not.
Who's ahead of him, Derek?
I'm not like you.
PJC, but I don't know who else. Jaylen Adams.
I'm giving credit to some guys who have been out.
Okay.
That I still need to see Kendrick do it on the road in big-time games. I'm just not giving you love because you show me signs every now and then. Now, he's been solid, but let's not get carried away yet. All right, you don't make a season over the course of 4 or 5 games that you've played well at home. Go on the road and do it, and then we can see.
Makes sense. You do. That's why we put you in this position.
But I like Kendrick's talent. I like how he's learned quickly. He was frustrated early on. He could have stuck to his guns and shown a lot of hubris and been like, this is the way I do it. He didn't do that. He learned. He's got Jason Kidd and some older guys around him that can teach him about the NBL, how you play. Remember, he is a young point guard. Now, at the end of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the number 2 point guard in the competition. I'm not talking about money.
No, I've got him number 2 right now, again, with the way he's turned around.
Fair.
Yeah, and I think you look at his season numbers and the way that he's gone about his business. It's the composure for me, and I credit a lot of that to Mike Wells. I think Mike Wells had a conversation with him and said, look, this is what we need from you. And I go back to watching the way he's playing. So 20 points a game, 6 assists, the steals defensively. When I go back to that game against Rob Edwards where he was astounding. But he said in the post-game interview with Kelsey on the weekend that Mike called him out for the game in New Zealand, or maybe it was a practice, and said he was crying. So he's still a young pro, but he said the way that he's bought into it. And I go back to that first quarter, right, when Illawarra came out strong. He didn't take a shot, I don't think, until like 4-minute mark. He was getting everybody else involved. Okay, now's my time. Him picking his moments. Him and PJC, I'd like to see them in an open court sprint, by the way. They unbelievably quick in the open court, but he is a major reason why Adelaide's a championship contender.
And I like the way he can sense the moment. And he also, as a point guard, when the other point guard is really good, you have to be offended when he does something well.
Like in New Zealand.
Yep.
Yep.
And you can't necessarily, though, let it take you out of what the offensive structure is or the defensive structure. So take it personally. Try and get back at that guy, but do it within the framework of what is working best or will work best for your team to win the game.
The Adelaide 36ers, my favourite team to watch. Kendrick, superstar, MVP for mine at the moment. Just ahead of PJC, which is a controversial one.
Wow,
I know.
that's a difference.
I know.
And you're going to move on, aren't you?
And I'm going to move on before you can ever call me to account on anything that I say right there. But then the Sydney Kings are the most frustrating because we know how good they can be, but we don't always see it right now. Some Jaylen Adams heroics saved them on the weekend. But what are we going to get from them? Pre-season, they were locked up. Championships, it was all sold. What's happening now?
Well, Jaylen Adams was massive in the fourth quarter. This is what a former MVP needs to do when the game's on the line and you're getting beat down in kudos bunkering on your home floor. He still doesn't look 100%, but as we've spoke about, 75% Jaylen Adams is still better than a lot of players in the competition. He put the team on his back and said, I refuse to lose at home. We're going to make sure we get this thing done. And he's the ticket, right? If they're going to win a championship this year, they need a fully fit and healthy Jaylen Adams doing that night in and night out.
Well, his ability to break down defenses and create opportunities, whether it be from outside the three-point line or the drive and dish type stuff. He's so good with the basketball in his hands. However, I think as he's trying to get himself back into tip-top condition and release some of the tension around that team, he needs to move the ball early in the games and offense. I thought the Kings' offense was quite stagnant in the first half against Southeast Melbourne, but then in the second half, when the time comes for Jaylen to take over, that's when he's got to assert himself. And we saw the other night, 12 fourth quarter points against Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. The Kings stole that victory.
Well, let's have a look at what Gorge had to say post-game as well.
Where we're trying to go from when we started this with this group moving forward, it was a real kick in the guts tonight. Thought the guys played like they were entitled. You know, that no energy, no effort, got beat on the glass, late on the rotations, walking down, not five guys getting back on defense.
As a man who's concerned about optics, I will say, when your coach is saying we lack energy, bull qual, you could wake up when you're sitting next to him. He was asleep for the first half of that and didn't look too interested to the second.
Just based on some of the last press conferences from Gorge, you could imagine there's been some pretty fiery practices right now because the talent's there. We talk about the talent, but is everybody coming to the show every single day? You don't win a championship by just turning it on for every single game. It's everything that leads up to it. It's all of that. We continue to talk about their rotations, what team they start with, what team they finish with, who doesn't play the fourth quarter, all of this. But again, it's going to come down to Jaylen Adams and Xavier Cook's going to be the two main ones that lead them to a championship series. They've got enough talent to make sure they get it all done. But the fact that this is not just the first or second worrying press conference from what Gorge is saying about the team is probably where the fever break's going to come at the right time for the Kings.
The big thing for them right now is that they're the number one defensive team in the league. So the signs are there that they can put it all together. On the offensive end, as I mentioned before, it just isn't cohesive. It's not flowing. And until they can get that worked out, they've got to turn defensive stops, run-outs, steals, all those types of defensive actions. They've got to get easy buckets and just take some of the pressure off the offense because it's not really working. And as Gorge is still trying to figure out who's who. Remember, he's been out of the league for a couple of years.
We're almost at the halfway point of the season, though. There comes a point where we've got to say, hey, you got to know who's who by now because this is a very close league.
Things have changed so rapidly and so much since Gorge was last in the league. Like, this is a rapidly changing league. And I think it's taken him probably a little bit longer than I had anticipated.
And I think a lot of it is, we talked about the rotation. You go in, you have preseason, you play all these preseason games, and then you think, okay, here's my 8 guys, maybe 8.5 to start the season, 9 rotation guys. Let's give that 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, this isn't quite working. Let me tweak a couple of pieces here. Rather than, hey, let's play all 12 and see who's going to live up to the standards that I'm setting. Really hard to do as a player. That's probably where everybody's at is if you start with that, then you can tweak it 2 or 3 times in the first 9 rounds, but trying to do it every single game, you're probably not going to figure out who your main core is if it changes every game.
Especially with the injuries, like Galloway is out now. Obviously, we mentioned the Adams injury. They've had some things that they couldn't have planned for, and also that early preseason success may have given them a slight
You talking about Brisbane Bullets here, or are you talking about Sydney?
Come on.
Hey, no,
Come on.
He's not talking about the Brisbane Bullets. He's got a 5-year extension for our man Justin
No,
Tuller
that's
over
not
there.
what I
remember
said.
that. We're going to cut to...
Maybe there was a false sense of security with the Kings with those early preseason wins.
It probably was. If the NBL's taught us one thing, is do not read anything into the first 6-7 games of this league. The parity, it's all happening. We're going to be back after the break.
Making his move. And making his mark. In the face, that one's a little short. Pepper takes the board, will sneak through the defence. And a three-pointer as well. Rob Lowe trying to get Golding involved. He turns the corner and he owns the moment with his 9th three of the night.
Remarkable doesn't even sum it up when you talk about Chris Golding there. Rob Edwards, lay in wait. Tyler Harvey, move back, because Chris Golding is just separating this one, blitzing the competition at the moment. You know what? The thing about Chris is we know he's not going to let up. He's got the longest streak for one a game, and I expect that to continue for some time to come. But it gives me no greater pleasure to welcome in an old friend and at times an old foe, Olgun Uluc. Olgun, welcome in, fresh off the bat. We're talking about Cam Oliver. What is going on in Sydney?
In my mind, there's not as much going on as people think. I spoke with Cam Oliver yesterday. We spoke about his role, the volatile minutes that he's dealing with, and what he needs to bring. And he was pretty self-aware. He came in with some accountability. He said he needs to bring energy. That's what Brian Gordon wants him to do. He said that there are no complaints from him. He's not complaining about his situation. He knows what he has to bring to earn those minutes. And it sounds like he's prepared to do that. He's still figuring out how to be coached by Brian Gordon. And it feels like Gordon is still figuring out how to coach a player like Cam Oliver, who is extremely talented, obviously, but is a different kind of character. It's the same thing with Jaylen Adams. It's the same thing with a bunch of guys on that roster. But it feels like both parties are still all in and trying to figure it out.
Oh, can you be a little closer in terms of the Sydney Kings practices? We just talked about it there with gorgeous press conferences. Do you have any insight, I guess, on how the practices have been the last couple of weeks? Is there a tension in terms of we need to be better at this, these intangible, these levels of professionalism that Gorge is talking about? Is this happening week day in, day out?
I was at a practice last week, actually, and firstly, the intensity is up there. There's like 25, 30 people in that practice. A ton of training players go in that gym. So the intensity is really high. And it doesn't seem like it's a case of, do this, this, and this from a basketball standpoint. It seems like it's purely from an effort standpoint, from an energy and hustle standpoint. Those are the things that Gorge is clearly trying to drill into Cam Oliver. Now, it seems as though during practices, that intensity is high. And when Gorge feels as though the energy is dropping, you hear him, right? There was a moment where he stopped the entire practice. He was yelling at the top of his lungs. You could feel that force from Gorge, and Cam Oliver feels that too. So this stuff is being relayed to Cam Oliver. He's slowly understanding it and appreciating it. I feel like he'll get there, but it still may take a little bit of time for those two personalities to mesh.
Olgun, looking at the team as a whole, where do you think Gorgon feels like the greatest improvement can come from in order to get this team to compete at the championship level?
So the key was bringing Jaylen Adams back into the lineup. He's been dealing with that back injury. Having him come back in, I think it cleaned up a lot of the other rotations. He was playing Tyler Robertson out of position, playing him at the point, and that messed up the entire wing rotation. So once Adams was back in the lineup and slowly getting back to the sort of player that we know he is, everything else started to fall back into place. And he mentioned in the press conference, it was interesting, he's drilling this down to an 8 or 9 man rotation. He's figuring out who those 8 or 9 guys are. And then I've experienced this with Gorge covering the Boomers, where it takes him a bit of time to find the combinations, to find what works, to find that 8 or 9 man rotation. It feels like he's getting closer to that. And that game against the Phoenix, while it was absolutely iffy to start, the way they finished it, it was a positive for them. And it feels like Gorge came away with that game with a lot of negatives, but really zoning in on who the rotation is.
Olgs, I have it on absolutely no authority that Joe Luala-Chul is going to be moving to the Tasmania Jack Jumpers. Are you able to provide any insight to that at all?
The insight I have is that you bringing anything to the table from an Intel perspective is largely wrong.
I'm punching you from over here.
Let's talk about JLA. Now, he is currently with the Liaoning Flying Leopards. As of today, he is still with that team. Now, things can change going forward. There's a possibility for either of those parties to ultimately back out of that contract. But as of today, he's still with them. In the hypothetical that he's no longer with that team, he will come back to Australia. The NBL would be an option, but the absolute front runner, the overwhelming front runner for Joe Lualachua Jr. services would be somewhere like Japan, somewhere like the EuroLeague, where he can really get that sort of money that a player like that deserves. Joining an NBL team in the middle of a season is very tough when you're trying to get that intense pay packet that someone like JLA can get. As of this very moment, there has been zero communication with any NBL team with regard to a potential JLA signing this season. There's been no contact with the Jack Jumpers, no contact with any team as of now.
Your tomato sources are a lot stronger than me, Olgun, in terms of what your feelers you put out there. But you mentioned that and everything that's going on, and I hear a lot of things, but not to your level. But looking forward, let's fast forward to a month, maybe after Christmas. But would it shock you then if JLA was playing for an NBL team by Christmas?
It would shock me, because the overwhelming feel that I get is that if he does ultimately get off that Chinese team and looks elsewhere, then Japan and the EuroLeague are the absolute front runners for him. So it would shock me if he's on an NBL team. Let me throw something back to you, Pete. You're very tuned in with this Melbourne United team. You've seen the way guys go in and out of that Hoop City building over an off-season, even through the preseason. We saw Joe Lualachua Jr. in there. Can you see JLA playing for any other team other than Melbourne United, considering how close those two parties are?
That's the biggest question. Again, that's when I first saw that come on the tweet, and when everybody's talking about it. In Tasmania, would he be a great fit? Yes. Should we talk about money-wise? People are talking about the New Zealand Breakers because they've had Taco Fall rolling around. And you mentioned JLA's not cheap. That's the one thing everybody's got to understand. And the money that he commands and demands is deserving because of what he's done in the NBL. So could I see it? Yes, but then the more I think about it, could I see it? Probably not, because again, the connection that they have and the success that he's had. But again, I think that there's going to be big EuroLeague teams and Japanese teams that look at him as well.
Well, if anyone's going to know anything about Melbourne United, it's going to be you, Pete. You're so well entrenched with that team.
Yeah, I did play for them, weirdly enough.
Melbourne United won a championship with them. But Olgun, I'm going to give you a quick moment, because Kendrick Davis, are you willing to publicly apologise for the insulting words that you gave him and fired him up? Are you able to apologise live on air?
I will leave it to the intelligence and fair-mindedness of the audience to go and read my content and appreciate the words that I wrote about Kendrick Davis, who is absolutely off to a really impressive start. He seems like the goods so far, but go back and read the content that I wrote, and then Felix, you'll come back to me, and I'll be expecting an apology from yourself.
Yeah, I owe a lot of people apologies in my time, and they are not forthcoming. But Olgun, you are right. What you said at the time was bang on. I just love stirring you up. Thank you so much for joining us, doing a fantastic job with ESPN as usual.
Thanks, fellas.
It's good catching up with the great man. We're going to cut to a break. Plenty more coming up next. Welcome back to Overtime. If any of your friendship group, any of your family said that Tasmania was going to beat New Zealand, I will show you a bold-faced liar, because nobody saw it coming. They had no business beating the New Zealand Breakers, yet in true NBL fashion, they did it. Derek, they were unbelievable. Tassie, but New Zealand, flash in the pan, or are we worried? Panic stations?
No, New Zealand are fine. Look, they had a bad day. They had some really big victories in the lead up to this game. And Tasmania can do this to you, Pete. They can shut you down with their defense, especially down there at My State Bank Arena. And that's what happened. They made some shots. They got out in transition, and they steal the game.
Yeah, this is a flush game for me. I think every team's going to have a flush game.
Yep.
And I talk about that as you just, whatever reason, maybe you woke up, you had a bad sleep, it was a bad travel.
I think they didn't even sleep.
So everyone has one of that, and we're seeing the parity in the league. Every team's having one of those, it seems. But just looking at that, they scored 3 points in the third quarter, which is probably where the concern comes from. And I say flush game, well, you might not even watch the film. You just say, look, this has just not been us. But Matt Mooney, I love you. You're a terrific human being. Please never throw Dane Panoa a lob like that in traffic ever again.
Oh, I'll tell you what, we'll say flash in the pan there for the Breakers. They're far better than what they showed. But losing to Tassie by 30 is ugly stuff at the state of the league right now. But the Phoenix continuing to roll under Josh King. But a little bit of the same with Nathan Sobey, who was off again. But the shining light for them has been Angus Glover, who appears to be flourishing under King.
Well, we sat here in round 2 or round 3, and I said throw Glover in the starting lineup. But this is when they were at full strength. This is what he's capable of doing. We've seen him do this in spurts and in different moments. In Game 5 when he's playing for the Sydney Kings, Angus Glover is ready for an extended opportunity and responsibility on the offensive end. I love they've put him in the starting lineup, and he is relishing that. And he is an energy guy. You're not going to come out flat if Glover is starting.
He's just a good basketball player, and he gives them good size in the backcourt. I like his versatility, and he adapted really well to playing the point guard position over the past few rounds. Look, how do they address some of the backcourt problems that they may run into with Derek Walton Jr. requiring more minutes? The other person who I think needs time is Owen Foxwell. If you look at his advanced metrics, they're very good. And at some point, Pete, you've got to promote and get these younger guys real-time experience. And he looks like a player to me. He could provide good value for Southeast Melbourne down the line.
The state of the union right now for Planet Nathan Sobey is starting to play a little bit better.
Yeah.
He's passing the ball, he's distributing the ball really well. But again, the numbers are just not sustainable for success. Going 2 for 9, this sort of stuff. If he was to shoot 5 or so less shots and continue playing the way he is, they would be much better off.
That's correct. He was 3 of 18 from the 3 across 2 games. And
what the hell? What was that?
Yeah, that was a rough one, shot clock situation. But the thing about Nathan that's mystifying is you look at his shot and the technique, it all looks really good, but it's just not getting the result that the shot probably warrants. But he is playing better basketball. He needs to find a little bit more composure on the offensive end, trust his teammates, and inject himself similar as we described about DJ Vasiljevic. Be a critical scorer as opposed to trying to be a volume shooter.
I think he can still get downhill, put heat on the rim, live in the floaters, because we've seen Nathan Sobey, he shoots a lot of threes over his course of his career, but I've gone into the numbers of it. So he's played 274 games. How many games in that do you think that he's made over 3 threes?
Ooh, this is a tough one.
So he's made 4 plus.
I would say 42.
28.
Good job, Felix.
So, but it's not many in terms of how many he gets up. So I think we all know that he's at his best putting heat on the rim. You didn't get it.
I just guessed 2 off it, and you gave me absolutely donuts.
Sorry, participation awards. We'll give.
Yes. Thank you.
2 for 2.
You're not coming back.
Sorry, my bad.
You know what? That ends the subject right there. It's time to get into the trend as your friend, because we've had enough of the fake handshakes. They are banned from here on out. Now, the trend is your friend. Let's just have a look at my friends. I talk them up all the time, but the Adelaide 36ers box office, exciting. Superstars left, right and centre. Their home record right now. We talk about trends. We just spoke about it. 10 in a row. Look at them. They are beating good teams. The Kings, Southeast Melbourne, they're getting a little bit better. The Hawkies, Cairns Taipans, they can have their nights. They are getting good wins at home. Now, we were in there. It's not just them playing well on court. Stuff like this. The Showtime style of basketball that they play, the aptly named Entertainment Centre, the fans are rabid. They are rabid. When Melbourne United play John Cain, it's a civilised audience. Over there, they are frothing at the mouth for a Montrez dunk. And that's what makes it such a tough place to play.
I agree. And they've got, I talk about the need to have stars, and they've got several stars in that lineup. They've got
exciting guys.
Exactly.
Not just good players.
They've got import stars. They've got local stars. They've got people that you want to go out and watch perform. And the other thing is those guys give back, not only on the court, but outside the court. And I've said it before, I love the fact that Montrez, a guy who has spent his career in the NBA, he's proud of being here. He's promoting the NBL on his social media, and he's present. He's here, and he wants to be here.
I'm tingling, though. It's got me excited. It's got me very, very excited. So I did a bit of research. When I say I did a bit of research, I asked the producer to do a little bit of research. And they've come up with the past champions and their records at home. You look at this, 11-3, 12-2, 9-5, 10-4, 8-6. Tassie, you're always ruining the data, Tasmania. With whatever it is, they find a way to ruin the data and be an outlier. But you see that Perth Wildcats in 2020. Now, there was a bit associated with that championship as well. But I just think they're going to be a sneaky one one because you know what? They're going to work their way up the ladder. If you continue this home streak going, then I reckon they're going to be all right. And I think a futures bet towards the Adelaide 36ers for the championship, you could do worse.
Home court advantage matters when you get into a playoff series. If they don't finish top 2 and they come to a play-in tournament, it becomes even more important because you could be 1 game away from going home, 2 games away from going home. Please never tell me that things make you tingle again because I will leave this set.
Tell you what, Petey, I hate to say it, but I'm tingling because we've got 1 segment to go. Up next, after the break.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
Now, it feels like only yesterday the Brisbane Bullets were winning the Blitz, and boy, have things changed now. We're already up to round 9, and the Brisbane Bullets not exactly dominating right now. So let's have a look at the schedule and see where the fellas think that the best games are coming up. And I'm going to switch it around this time.
Oh.
Who needs a win the most on this page?
Oh, on this page, who needs to win the most? I said it earlier in the show, I'm still going with Illawarra. I think going into fever break, if they lose this to Sydney, another competitive contending team. If they win this, I think it really gives them a mental freshness going into what will be a very important fever break.
I'm going to go with the Perth Wildcats. I think it's not long till Bryce Cotton comes back. Any wins that you can scrape together from the bottom of the barrel while he's gone are worth 2.
I think New Zealand going up to Cairns. Cairns still trying to find their way with a bunch of injured players looking for form. And New Zealand, off of that disappointing loss, they've got to get that one if they're a legitimate playoff team.
That's Friday, Saturday. What's happening on a Sunday? Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane and Perth. Now, this one's going to be interesting. There's nothing really that jumps off the page in terms of teams needing a win, but out of pure selfishness, I want to see Adelaide keep on rolling.
No, I'm going to be locked into that game, yes, but Brisbane. This is Brisbane's first double-header of the season. They've played single game rounds up until this weekend. They go to the fever break and then they have double headers basically all the way through. Justin Schuller said that's probably why it hasn't worked out so far, but this will be their first back end of a double header. How do they go?
Well, Pete, if they lose in Tasmania on the Friday night,
Interesting.
the season's on the line Sunday.
Yep.
Certainly.
And that's a tough team to have to beat, Perth, but you got to get it.
We're starting to get into the territory of must-win games. Let's have a look. Who's under the most pressure coming into round 9? Tell you what, Derek, I'm not sure what I'm cooking up in that thing, but I probably wouldn't eat it. Who's under the most pressure this weekend? Well, I think it's Nathan Sobey and Derek Walton joined together. Can they coexist? The Phoenix have been rolling without Derek Walton Jr. He needs to come back in and they need to have success.
Yeah, I'll be keeping it the same. Keep him off the bench for a little bit and just try and make it work with what you figured out. And then once he gets his health, he'll be ready to roll.
I think Derek Walton Jr. is an outstanding player. He'll figure it out.
There we go. Sometimes the greats, people like you, just find a way. Derek, fantastic. Your debut, almost as good as your NBL debut. Unbelievable. Thanks for tuning in. # NBL Overtime.
No.
On Twitter.